Hi guys, Peter here, Thailand bound. I'm going to talk to you today about the changes that I've noticed in Thailand over the last 3 decades. As I mentioned in my last video, I first visited Thailand in 1992. I lived there continually for 6 years and I've been visiting ever since. I generally spend half of my time here, half of my time in Thailand, and I'm going to be going out there again in 2 weeks' time. So looking forward to that. So the title of today's video is how has Thailand changed for visitors over the last 3 decades? So not quite 3 decades for me, it's about 27 years, but long enough to see the changes. I've made some notes and I will be referring to them. So basically, let's discuss the transportation changes over that time. So obviously there's a new airport. I mean, in those days when I flew in 1992, I flew into the old Don Muang airport. That's a very old airport. It first opened in 1914 by the Thai military. It was first used for commercial flights in 1924, I believe. But obviously it's not closed now. They're still using it for cargo. But we're now coming into the Suvarnabhumi airport, which is a very good airport. Of course, back then in 1992 when I arrived, there was no BTS. That's a SkyTrain system in Bangkok, which is a fantastic way to get around the city. That actually opened in 1999. I can still remember when they were constructing it down Sukhumvit Road in particular. There were several accidents. Some people were killed, but obviously the less said about that, the better. There was no MRT system, the mass rapid transport system that first opened in 2004. That's their underground. Again, very, very good way to get around the city. It's cheap, it's clean, it's air conditioned, and I'd recommend of a way of travelling around Bangkok in particular. Taxis, that's another area that's changed. Of course, back then, I'd say right up into the year 2000, I mean, basically the main mode of taxi was the tuk-tuk. To anybody who's been living on another planet, a tuk-tuk is basically a three-wheeled, two-stroke motorized vehicle that they use as a taxi, no sides on it. A bit like being on a motorbike, if that makes sense. That was generally the way most people got around, or you jumped on the back of a motorbike, either or. But generally now they do have a lot of taxis in Bangkok. They're absolutely everywhere. They're air conditioned, they're metered, they're safe, they're regulated. Even, you know, if you sent your wife off in one, there's nothing to worry about. Generally they're very, very safe. And as I say, they are regulated these days. Let's talk a little bit about the exchange rates. This is actually a boulder contention on YouTube at the moment because obviously the Thai baht is very, very strong and it's killing people who are on fixed incomes who are actually retired in Thailand. So in 1992, if you were to change a UK pound, you'd receive 75 baht. I know, unbelievable. The US dollar, you'd get 63 Thai baht, and for the Australian dollar, you got approximately 41 baht. I mean, guys, let's hope those days come back, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I'll talk a little bit about the entertainment zones and pricing. I think you know what I mean by entertainment zones, places like Soy Cowboy, Nana Plaza, in Pattaya, Walking Street, those sort of places. So when I talk about these prices, I'm not talking about smaller, cheaper bars. I'm talking about go-go bars and bars like the ones outside the entrance to Nana Plaza, places like Big Dog, Stumble In, those sort of places. So basically, if you bought a Heineken, it would set you back 40 baht. That was a standard sort of price in those days. A lady's drink was 40 baht. If you wanted to have the company of a female for a few hours, let's put it that way, the bar fine was 200 baht. You would have to pay the lady for her time. If you're only spending a short time with her, that would be 700 baht. And if you decided and she agreed that you wanted to spend a longer time, if you get my drift, then basically you would pay 1,000 baht. And that was basically the prices in the entertainment zones. So I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about the attitude of the bars, the girls, just how it's changed. I mean, I've noticed a big change. It's so much more business orientated now. And what I mean by that is when you went into a bar in the old days, the decor wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. I mean, you'd have fairy lights strung around the bar. your feet would stick to the carpet. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face for about 20 seconds, but kind of a nice atmosphere. Maybe just because I'm getting on a bit that I look back on it with fond memories. But when they open these bars now, they spend absolutely millions of bahts on the lighting and sound systems and all that sort of thing. But as I say, I was going to talk about the attitude of the girls and the staff, that sort of thing, the waitresses. So back then, for me, they just seemed a lot more friendly. I'm not saying they're unfriendly now, they're not, but I think they're a lot more business orientated. I mean, when you went into a bar in the old days, they always used to why you. All the girls would why you. And if you live on another planet and you don't know what a why is, basically that's a Thai greeting where they put their two hands together like this, and sometimes they'll bow. It's a mark of respect, and it's their greeting. Very rare you'll get a why from a Thai bar girl or a waitress. The only time I see it these days is if you leave a hefty tip, which isn't very often because of the exchange rate. You'll definitely get a why then. The more the tip, the longer the why. But no, their attitudes changed. I mean, it's, the ladies' drinks, there's another good example. I mean, in the old days, they wouldn't particularly ask you for a ladies' drink. They'd come across, say hello, smile, ask you where you come from, and it was just polite to offer them a drink, because at the end of the day, they're not there enjoying themselves, they're there working. And if you're not an idiot, you'll be aware of that, and you'll pay for their time. But it was different. So basically, when they got their ladies' drink, it was quite comical, because it was a champagne glass and it was filled with Coca-Cola. They sipped on that, they talked to you, and generally that lasted for about 15 to 20 minutes. When they didn't ask you for another drink, they'd smile, look at the glass, hint. It was all fun and games. And if you wanted to spend a bit more time with a lady talking to her, then you bought her another ladies' drink. It's all changed now, guys. I mean, you go in there and within 10 seconds of the girl approaching you, she'll say to you, "You buy me drink," quite forcefully. And now the drinks have actually changed as well. No longer are the days where they had champagne glasses filled with Coca-Cola. It's now tequila and Red Bull, which if you've never been to Thailand before, you're going to get stung, because that is now two drinks. You're paying for the tequila and you're paying for the Red Bull. The other thing about it is a lot of them will only have the tequila, and there's a method to the madness. You might think if they've got the chance to get a double drink, why would they simply order the tequila? So basically it's like this. The tequila comes to the table. How long does it take to drink a shot of tequila that big? It's 2 seconds, and she'll want another drink immediately. And if you don't buy that drink, she's off, and she'll be touting for drinks with somebody else. So that's kind of, that's not a very pleasant situation to be in nowadays. You just feel like you're being used. And I mean, we knew we were being used in the old days, but it wasn't so blatant, let's put it that way. But my personal thoughts on the matter, I think they've shot themselves in the foot rather. So basically, because of this, I mean, a lot of guys, especially if they live there or they're experienced travellers, have been there many times, they've just given up on ladies' drinks. They won't buy them, full stop. I used to buy the occasional ladies' drink just for a bit of company. If I was waiting for somebody, I'd meet a friend, and if I got there early, I might buy a drink for a lady. I wouldn't dream of doing it now. But as I say, I think they've shot themselves in the foot, because these guys, most guys that I know, they don't buy ladies' drinks. Perhaps that's why they're so hardcore at trying to get more drinks out of other people. But it's backfired, and I don't think there's any turning around from that, which is a shame. And just generally the attitude of them, they're so well trained now by the mama-sans, by the bar managers. They're not, in the old days you'd see girls talking to each other if they weren't dancing. Not anymore. They're pushed towards customers who don't have girls with them, and it's just not a great feeling. I suppose if you've never been there before, you won't notice it and you'll just think it's normal. But if you've got something to compare it with, then it's not something for the better. Right, I'll talk a little bit now about the actual streets like Soy Cowboy and Nana Plaza. Pattaya, you've got Walking Street. Now in those days, when you visited those places, a little bit of ducking and diving, it was a guy's night out. You didn't publicise the fact that you were going there, even if you were just going to have a drink. But Nowadays, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this. I mean, especially Walking Street in Pattaya, guys, it's like Disneyland. I mean, I was recently there, and if you sit in one of these outside bars and you're watching the world go by, you know, in the old days, you'd see girls going back to their bars, you'd see guys walking down deciding what bars they're going into, and the odd couple just walking down there out of fascination, really. But it really, really is like Disneyland now. I mean, you'll see groups of Chinese in particular, and they're a tour group. They really are a tour group. You've got the leader in front, they've got one of those triangle flags, they're holding it up here, and they're just gawking into these bars. I mean, they've got no intention of having a drink, sitting down, anything like that. It's have dinner, out for the evening, let's walk down Walking Street and see, you know, all the perverted foreigners and the naughty girls, as it were, which isn't always the case, as you know, guys. But it really is like Disneyland. And you know, it's the same in Soy Cowboy. I mean, I remember in Soy Cowboy when it was, you know, you never had any of that, but now you'll just see hordes and hordes of people down there, and it's just like that. You know, it's like going to visit anything in Thailand. It's sightseeing now, so that's another big change that I've noticed. The infrastructure in Pattaya, that's changed quite a lot as well. I mean, I can remember in the old days, the entertainment basically ended at the Dolphin Roundabout. I think you had two massage parlors in Soy 6, and there was definitely nothing after that. I've seen videos on YouTube where Soy 6 is absolutely packed with bars and well, all sorts down there. There isn't, I don't think there's an empty building down there, but I mean, back in the 90s, you'd go down Soy 6, there was a place on the right, 3/4 of the way down the street, there was one on the left, and that was it. The beach road hasn't changed that much. You've still got pretty much most of what was there. I mean, the other thing they introduced to Pattaya, which does my head in, is these live bands, especially in. I've got nothing against live bands, don't get me wrong. If you want to go and visit a live band, then it's great fun. But Soy 8 in particular used to be a great soy just for cruising the bars. You know, you'd have a drink in one, move to the next one, and work your way up the soy or down if you're coming the other way. But they've just got loud music, live music, and you know what it's like with the Thai bands. They just compete to be the loudest, not the best necessarily, but the loudest. And it's, for me, especially at my age now, it just does my head in. So I don't particularly like the live bands down there. Walking Street, I mean, that's always been as it's been. The only other thing I notice is just the huge amount of numbers down there now. I mean, you see a lot more younger people, a lot more groups. There's a lot more visitors from India, I've noticed. There's a lot more Chinese groups. It's a little bit like a cattle market, to be frank, but I suppose that's the way it's going to be. You can't really change progress. Foreign products such as food, they weren't always easy to obtain like they are now. I mean, I remember back in the 90s they had they probably had several outlets, but there was one in particular I'd go to. It was Villa Supermarket on Sukhumvit Road. You could get quite a lot of British food in there, and I like Thai food, don't get me wrong. I'd eat it every day of the week, but when you live there, every now and again you get a pining for something from home. You know, it could be something simple like a jar of Marmite. Only English people will understand that one. But basically, you went to Villa and you got it. But now, I mean, it's everywhere. You don't have to go. In those days, you hunted for those products. You really had to look for them and ask around. But now they're everywhere. You can basically go into several supermarkets and buy all the foreign food. Not just in Bangkok. I mean, I was recently in Huahin and Market Village. They've got a lot of foreign food in there. Blueport, again, they have a lot down there. And Pattaya, I remember when it was just Mike's shopping mall, but now you've got all these huge places that sell absolutely everything. So that's my thoughts, guys. That's pretty much it. It's a little bit of a rant, I suppose, but after 27 years I have noticed quite a lot of changes. The last question really I suppose to ask is it still worth visiting Thailand? Absolutely. I mean, where else is there in the world? I mean, I've been to Cambodia. I've been to the Philippines. The traffic and the pollution was awful. Filipino people very nice. I'm not being disrespectful to them. Cambodia, it wasn't really my kind of scene. I didn't feel safe. I've looked at the crime figures on the internet. It definitely isn't as safe as Thailand. I think the big pull with Thailand has got to be the people. I mean, they're just so warm, friendly. it's just, you know, I mean, I've never had a confrontation with a Thai. And what I really like about the Thai people is if you make a mistake, they'll smile at you. And that's wonderful. I mean, in England, you pull out in your car accidentally, they'll shake their fist at you and they'll start screaming out the window. But that just doesn't happen in Thailand. You know, as I say, if you make a mistake, they'll smile at you. And that's as good as reason as any to visit there. Yes, it is more expensive if you're going out to the entertainment zones. If you're going there on holiday, then it doesn't matter because you're saved up. You've got plenty of cash with you. And if you're spending 500 quid, £800 more, then it doesn't really matter. If you live there, then I don't think it necessarily is more expensive. You know, if you go around the local malls and local bars outside of the entertainment zones, especially in other provinces like Isan, or if you don't like to live up there, places like Huahin, other coastal resorts, I think it's just as cheap as it always has been. Taxis are cheap, Thai food's cheap. I watch all these videos with amusement, people complaining how expensive Thailand is nowadays. Yes, the exchange rate is very bad at the moment, but that's basically because the Thai baht is very, very strong. So is Thailand still worth visiting? Yes, it is. If you've never been there before, suggest you give it a try for a week, and like me, you'll probably be hooked. But that's it for today, guys. That's my video. Hopefully I'll see you soon with another subject, but until then, thanks very much for watching, and this is Pete checking out. Thank you.